back to what's being reported tonight here on the news feed, I beg your pardon. The former boss at Bosasa, Chief Operating Officer Angelo Agrizzi, has released a written statement saying that his condition has deteriorated. He is being treated right now. His treating doctor has advised that he should be moved to a private facility for urgent care. Joining us now for an update on this is Angelo Agrizzi's legal representative, Daniel Witz. Daniel, good evening, and thank you very much for your time tonight. What is then the latest update on the health status of Angelo Agrizzi?
Good evening, and thank you for having me on the show. We were advised earlier today that Mr. Agrizzi's treating doctors needed him to be transferred to a private facility as his condition had worsened throughout the morning and throughout the day. And earlier this afternoon into the evening, he was transferred to a private hospital to receive urgent treatment.
Talk to us about what has caused his condition to deteriorate.
We don't know yet. We're still waiting for medical reports from the doctors. Obviously, as we raised at court, Mr. Agrizzi has various underlying issues, comorbidities for some people who know. And that, over and above the stress that was inflicted on him unexpectedly, we would imagine that led to the current health situation that he's facing.
Now, the magistrate, Mr. Fenter, Judge Fenter, was, of course, unconvinced by his medical condition and was not persuaded to grant him the necessary bail. Will you be challenging that decision?
We have challenged it. In fact, the morning after the decision was taken, we lodged our appeal papers, and we are currently waiting for the Johannesburg High Court to give us a date to argue the appeal against Magistrate Fenter's decision.
Now, Magistrate Fenter, of course, raising a couple of fears there, Daniel, particularly around the non-disclosure of 35.6 million in movable assets, but also a 17 million rand house bought in Italy, including cash in the bank amounting to about 13 million. Why the non-disclosure?
It's interesting. There's this aura of non-disclosure being tossed around in South Africa currently, but Mr. Agrizzi did in fact disclose it to the relevant authorities. You're obligated to disclose it to SARS, and you're obligated to disclose it to the South African Revenue Service. He in fact did this and paid his taxes, which is more than can be said by some other people that are currently being investigated and prosecuted. This was disclosed. We've been working with the NPA, with SARS investigators, with the Reserve Bank. All of this has been disclosed, and the decision to oppose his bail was a complete surprise to all of us when they acted like they didn't know any of this before. However, I won't say much more because we'll deal with it in our opposing papers in court.
Yeah. I mean, Judge Fenter also pointing out that indeed the properties overseas were legally acquired, the transfer of funds, all that was legally done. But he's still worried about the fact that you saw it fit not to disclose at two occasions, one at the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court, which you were at this time, but also to the Pretoria Commercial Crimes Court. Why fail in those two instances? Did you feel it was completely irrelevant to inform those courts and put it in your affidavit as you're applying for bail?
A bail application in South Africa is very specific. It asks you to set out what are your ties to keep you in South Africa. And we set out more than enough reasons for that. Mr. Agrizzi would never flee the country. His emotional ties, most importantly, his family, his children are in South Africa. His economic interests are in South Africa, regardless of his offshore assets. He came forward when no one knew the name Bosasa and African Global to expose mass corruption on a grand scale. All of this whilst knowing the risk that he faced. And for the prosecution to come and say, well, all of a sudden, 18 months later, we suspect or maybe he would skip the country, we just can't believe that. And in fact, we're very disappointed with the way that was handled, especially when Mr. Agrizzi has been open and played open cards from day one with them.
Now, the magistrate quite convinced that Mr. Agrizzi was setting up his expensive life in Italy, most importantly with the amount of money that has been transferred there. Can these fears be addressed by house arrest in your view?
Definitely. And in fact, this was raised both in argument in court and in our replying papers at the bail hearing. There's numerous matters which people have seen possibly in the Oscar Pistorius case, amongst others, high-profile cases where someone in Mr. Agrizzi's condition can be placed under house arrest. A monitoring bracelet can be placed on his ankle, and it's very easy. He can check into a police station, and we were happy to offer these conditions to the court, but they would have none of it.
Well, with past experience, especially on cases of corruption, the judge pointing out the headache of bringing back the Gupta family, for example, to come and face some of the charges, saying this would certainly be one of those challenges that we would be faced with. And he says, look, I can't close my eyes and my ears to the fact that the borders in South Africa are porous, and somebody with money, like Mr. Angelo Agrizzi, can obviously easily get out of these borders and end up in Italy and not be able to come back.
Well, we don't accept that point, because in making a grand sweeping statement that the borders are porous, the fact that whether the allegation is South Africa or the government and Home Affairs can't control its borders, why is that being placed on Mr. Agrizzi's shoulders? Further, with all due respect, you don't need means to skip the country. If someone is going to skip, you hear all these stories of people going through the Kruger Park, swimming through the rivers. If it's that serious, you can just hop over the border and skip. But that's not the case here. Regardless whether Mr. Agrizzi has means, he has been here for 18 months to fight the fight. He has appeared at every single court appearance. He's been out on bail. He's been at every single appearance at state capture, every SARS inquiry. Why now do the states see it fit that, oh, maybe this month he would leave the country, when no inclination was given that he was ever intending to do that, especially being a whistleblower and especially putting his life at risk?
Now, Daniel, while we're there, I mean, as of tonight, what do you know? Is Mr. Agrizzi awake? Is he conscious? Is he speaking? Is he in good spirits? How is he doing?
Unfortunately, at this stage, he's under sedation, so the doctors can treat him and stabilize his condition. So I can confirm that he is not awake, but they are trying to stabilize him, and we are just here to support the family throughout the night. So hopefully Mr. Agrizzi can get back onto his feet and fight the good fight another day.